Welcome to the National Immigration Conference Presidential Candidate Forum. My name is Gustavo Torres, and I am the Executive Director of CASA. I am an immigrant from Colombia. I was a legal permanent resident, and now I am a naturalized U.S. citizen and voter. During this National Immigrant Conference, we will hear from 3 candidates for President of the United States of America. Every presidential candidate was invited without regard to their party affiliation to educate us on their vision for building a successful nation of immigrants. The National Partnership for New Americans is an opportunity, and of course, we are not endorsing or supporting any candidate. But we are a friendly and welcoming group, and we ask that all of the presidential candidates be given a warm and deeply respectful welcome to our National Immigration Conference. I am the Executive Director of CASA. We are an immigrant organization working in Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Maryland. And I am a member of the board of the National Partnership for New Americans, which is our annual sponsor of the National Immigrant Conference, because we believe in New American Dreams platform, our immigrant vision for building a welcoming and vibrant democracy. I am the co-chair of FIRM because I am working with 36 other immigrant organizations to make sure that we are going to win comprehensive immigration reform. But also, I am on the executive committee of the Movement of Immigrants in America because we believe that it's necessary to build power to win immigration reform. And now, I want to share with you, and I want to introduce to you, it's my honor to introduce to you Governor Martin O'Malley. Governor Martin O'Malley is an extraordinary leader. We worked with him when he was the mayor of Baltimore and also the governor of Maryland. And let me tell you a little bit about Governor O'Malley. I want to share with you about some things that probably you already know about him, and he did as an extraordinary leader. Martin O'Malley ended the death penalty in Maryland. Martin O'Malley raised the minimum wage in Maryland. Governor Martin O'Malley signed into the law and defended at referendum marriage equality in Maryland. All of these extraordinary accomplishments have a huge impact in the Latino and immigrant community in my state. He did all of that when he bring together everybody to make sure that we accomplish that. But today, I want to speak with you about specifically what the governor did for the Latino and immigrant community in Maryland. First of all, he created a new American immigrant task force because the day-to-day norm under Governor O'Malley means that doing right by Maryland includes doing right by immigrants. Governor O'Malley passed the driver license for undocumented immigrants. Today, more than 125,000 immigrants who are undocumented have a driver license in Maryland. They can go to work, they can take the kids to the school, and they are not afraid because right now they have a driver license. Governor O'Malley passed the DREAM Act in Maryland for undocumented students. But passing the legislation was not enough. After anti-immigrant forces collected enough signatures to put the measure up for referendum, Governor O'Malley led the effort to win the hearts and minds of Maryland voters, producing in 2012 the first time in history that state's voters support overwhelmingly a pro-immigrant reform at the ballot. Also, Governor O'Malley stopped deportations in Maryland. What he did was that he stopped accepting immigrants, detainees in the jail that he directly controlled. But what I believe was the most important and extraordinary moment for our community and the boldest decision of Governor O'Malley was when we confronted, perhaps in the countries, the greatest human rights crisis at the moment. As tens of thousands of unaccompanied kids arrived to our borders, Governor O'Malley was the first leader who said, we need to welcome those kids to our state. Currently, in Maryland, we have more unaccompanied kids per capita than any state in our nation. It's because the extraordinary decision of Governor O'Malley. And right now, that the Mexican community, the Muslim community, the refugees are under attack, again, Governor O'Malley stood in support of our community. It's for this reason that is my great honor to welcome my friend, my partner in justice, and a great leader, Governor Martin O'Malley.
Very much, and thank you for the appropriately ethnic music. Si se puede, huh? Gustavo, thank you very, very much for your introduction, and thank you for all of the work that we were able to do together in all of those years serving the people of Maryland, a state that understood that we're all in this together and that we need to help each other if we're going to succeed. It's a great honor to be here with all of you. And I want to thank you for the tremendous work that you are doing day in and day out to call America forward to her true ideals. And we're also joined here by a couple of gentlemen who made a pretty harrowing journey from Bangladesh and then found themselves in seeking political asylum, found themselves detained for months and months and months on end. And I want to acknowledge the presence here of Amanul and Jubair. Oh, there they are. Guys, how are you? And these two gentlemen denied due process, like so many others in the growing detention camps that we maintain as a country, went on hunger strike in order to draw attention to the injustice that they and some others in detention camps were suffering because of our policies here. So, look, let me say a couple of words about that right off the bat. As a presidential candidate, and by the way, I am one of 3 people seeking the Democratic Party's nomination. You have more than 2 choices. And the other day I was in Arizona, and I went to Joe Arpaio's jail. And in front of that jail, I called for an end to immigrant detention camps in the United States of America. Look, one thing I learned as a young man is that the truth can defend herself, but she has to be stated first. And the sad truth of our times is this: we, the people, the United States of America, maintains the largest network and system of immigrant detention camps in the world. That is appalling. Most Americans would be appalled to hear that their tax dollars are going to detain women and children and families behind barbed wire fence and chain link fence. The enduring symbol of our nation is not the barbed wire and chain link fence. It is the Statue of Liberty, and we need to act like that. So let me share with you a few thoughts, if I may. Gustavo touched on many of the things we were able to do together. It is my belief that the genius of our nation is that in every generation, we take actions to include more people more fully in the economic, the social, and the political life of our nation. Though that is the formula put into action in generation after generation that has made us a strong people. E pluribus unum. From many different and diverse cultures comes one strong nation. My great-grandfather came here from Ireland in the late 1800s. His name was also Martin. Whole race of people, only 7 names. His first language was not even English. It was Irish, because he was from that part in the west of Ireland where that was the language that was spoken. But the hopes and dreams that he had for his children and grandchildren were purely American. For many years, I have therefore very intentionally, aware of my own family's immigrant history, one side Irish, the other side mostly German, I have always used the term in my public service as a mayor and as a governor, new Americans. New Americans. Why? Because the genius of our country is not so much about where you've come from, but it's about where you're going and how all of us can move forward together. And today's new American immigrants are not the very first to face the ugliness that some display towards our new American neighbors. During my service as mayor, I always kept a sign from the 1890s on my desk that read, "Help wanted, no Irish need apply." And that was there as a daily reminder, not just to myself, but to every visitor of my office, that we were all once strangers in a strange land. But we have to help each other in order to move forward. The cause we share is the cause of human dignity. The work we share is the strengthening of that common good that we have as a people. And it is the American dream, that very concrete promise that wherever you start in our country, you start, but through your own hard work, you're able to get ahead. So I stand before you today as the only candidate that in this race, of the 3 of us seeking the Democratic Party's nomination, who can actually point to a record of actions, not just words, but actions that actually delivered results. Together, with leaders like Gustavo and others in CASA of Maryland and other organizations and businesses across our state, we fought to include more people. What do I mean by that? I mean that we did not wait for the federal government. We passed our own state version of the DREAM Act and defended it at the ballot. It opened up the possibility of affordable college to 36,000 dreamers. And when some of our cynical neighbors petitioned it to referendum to try to defeat it at the ballot, it was losing 47 to 39. But together, we ran the campaign, and as you might imagine, the DREAM Act kids do not have a political action committee. So we had to raise the dollars ourselves in small increments all over the state. But at the end of the day, when the voters had the opportunity to express their opinion, the DREAM Act was defended and prevailed with 59% of the vote in our state. And that was a victory not just for the Dreamers, that was a victory for all of the people of Maryland. In Maryland, we also expanded access to driver's licenses so people could get to and from work while obeying the rules of the road and the insurance laws. How much sense does it make to deny driver's licenses to new American immigrants? That doesn't make sense. So we passed driver's licenses in our state. In fact, I campaigned on it in 2006. We didn't put politics ahead of principle. We stood up for what was right. And in the very start of my administration in 2008, I established the New Americans Commission to highlight the skills that were being brought to our state, very oftentimes by new American immigrants who were underemployed and could have been contributing much more to our society. Why did we do that? Because I wanted to underscore the strength that is the arrival of new American immigrants in every generation. During my 2 terms as governor, we increased government contracts to Latino-owned businesses by 154%. We passed the living wage and we raised the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour, and in 2 counties to $12.80. We froze college tuition 4 years in a row. We were the only state to do that in a recession, which allowed Hispanic students to earn twice as many associate and bachelor's degrees during my 8 years as governor as the 8 years before. We drove Maryland's unemployment rate among Hispanic workers down to one of the lowest in the nation. Anyone can talk about these things. Anyone can promise these things in a campaign. It's quite another one, once you're in office, to actually stay at it, to be persistent, and to get it done. In other words, del dicho al hecho hay mucho trecho. So that is why, as I believe that how you campaign determines how you govern. The things that you build a consensus for in winning a campaign determines what sort of consensus you have to get things done in office. And that is why this summer I was the first candidate to lay out a specific, detailed plan of action that I would take as president to bring new American families out of the shadow economy and into the full light of an American society. I was the first candidate, and let us hope not the last, to release an immigrant integration agenda so that the more of our neighbors can participate more fully in strengthening the American dream we share. And let us hope that the other candidates follow it as well. There are profound differences in this race between the leadership and the record of actions that I have to offer and the positions on these issues of my opponents, Secretary Clinton and Senator Sanders. If you want to know why comprehensive immigration reform has not yet happened in Washington, one of the reasons is the old, self-defeating thinking that the other 2 candidates, Senator Sanders and Secretary Clinton, offer on these issues. Very different. Sometimes we wonder why it's so hard to get things passed. When we actually had a chance to pass comprehensive immigration reform in 2007, Senator Sanders voted against it. He even went on Lou Dobbs' show. You know Lou Dobbs. Made himself available on Lou Dobbs and said that immigrants take our jobs and depress our wages. Not only are those statements flat wrong, they also work contrary to the need we have for deeper understanding and the forging of a consensus. Secretary Clinton, for her part, actually voted for the poison pill amendment, the Dorgan Amendment, which even Ted Kennedy warned the Democratic caucus that if you vote for that amendment, it will kill the bill. Secretary Clinton, yes. She voted for the bill in its final form, but she voted for the poison pill that guaranteed that it would never pass. When new American immigrants here in New York had the opportunity to get driver's licenses in their own state, Secretary Clinton called the then governor of New York and begged him to pull the bill because it was inconvenient for her election. When Central American children showed up on our doorstep seeking refuge and fleeing death, Secretary Clinton's reaction was, send them back right away. It'll serve as a deterrent. That's not leadership, and that's not principle. When we're not going to bring people together. We're not going to achieve the deeper understanding necessary to pass comprehensive immigration reform or to shut down the deplorable practice of these expanding immigrant detention camps in our country by taking our cues from our pollsters, by waiting until something is safe to say before we say it. Secretary Clinton, in front of some groups, will still use the term illegal immigrants. And then in front of other groups, use a different term. She hasn't even put pen to paper and put forward a plan for comprehensive immigration reform or outlined the actions that she would take. For my part, I intend to use the authority of the President of the United States to extend executive action to as many people as possible. We don't need a president who will follow public opinion polls. We need a president who will lead and forge a new opinion and bring America back to her true self. Because our broken immigration laws have resulted in 9 million people living in the United States and eligible for citizenship but unable to participate fully in civic life, we must promote citizenship and do a better job of it and make it easier for people who are eligible to naturalize to do so. And therefore, I want to talk a little bit about immigrant integration. I know a cause near and dear to your hearts and the ideas that you have been putting forward. We have to promote citizenship. We have to invest in our schools to make them centers of community integration and start by making quality early childhood education a universal option for every child. And unlike some of the other candidates in the race, and I'm speaking specifically of Secretary Clinton, who wants to have a status test before people can apply for health care, I say that we should allow new American immigrants to apply for health coverage the same as everyone else under the Affordable Care Act. I also don't believe that it's too much that when we work to make college more affordable again in our country, and I have put forward a plan to move us to debt-free college in the next 5 years, I believe that affordable college should apply to every child's potential here in the United States of America, including new American immigrants. We need to also make it easier for all Americans, including new Americans, to join labor unions and to bargain collectively for better wages for all of us without fear, and to make sure that our new American neighbors can stand up when their labor rights are violated and speak up without fear. And because new Americans, we know, are far more likely to take the risk of starting a business and be entrepreneurs, we must invest in small businesses, in workforce development, and tear down the barriers like licensing and credentialing requirements that prevent this from happening in our country. This fight is about two very important things that we share. Number one, our values as Americans, and number two, an economy that has to work for all of us in order for it to work well. If you want wages to go up in the United States of America, one important action that we need to take, in addition to raising the minimum wage and paying overtime pay for overtime work, is getting 11 million of our neighbors out of the shadow economy and onto the books by passing comprehensive immigration reform. And let us not only end family detention, but all immigrant detention, unless there's a grave risk to our national security or public safety. Now more than ever, all of us have a responsibility to stand up for the values that unite us as Americans. Several months ago, I became the first presidential candidate to say that we, the United States, should accept the 65,000 Syrian refugee families that were fleeing genocide in Syria. I have met with moms and dads. I have looked into the eyes of children that have been rescued by coming here to the United States and fleeing the barbaric genocide. I have looked into their eyes, and these are the same children who that immigrant bashing carnival barker Donald Trump says should not be allowed to come here. The United States that my father fought for in World War II, the United States that so many of our sons and daughters have fought and died for, does not turn its back on families that are fleeing genocide and looking to us to save their lives. Nor do we create registries in our country or issue ID cards based on the faith of one group of Americans, do we? Nor do we say things like Donald Trump has said or urge unconstitutional actions like barring Muslims from any travel to and from the United States. That's outrageous. We've seen where that ends. That's the same type of naked prejudice that we saw with the internment of Japanese Americans here in World War II, or the turning away of Jewish refugees during World War II. Who's next, huh? When they start issuing the ID cards for people by faith, who's next? Catholics? Trade unionists? Artists? We know where this road leads, and it is not to a good place. So I have a message for Donald Trump. When you start your registry of Americans, Donald Trump, who oppose your backward, un-American ideas, you can start with me. And if you want to start a registry of Americans who disagree with your pandering, fear-mongering, hate-driven politics, you can start with me. Because we are all in this together. Strength at home is not just about security. It's about our values. It's about our compassion for one another. It's about our belief in the dignity of every single person and in the common good that we share and our own responsibility to strengthen it and make it better, not just for ourselves, but for our children. Let me leave you with this final story. Last year, when refugee children were braving this horrible journey north, fleeing death gangs in El Salvador and in Honduras and Guatemala, there were some governors around the country who spoke of these children as if they were a swarm of invading jackrabbits. One even said, "I'm going to find out where these rascals are and round them up." We took a different approach in Maryland. I said that we would care for these refugee children. We would care for them decently and respect the dignity of every child. We said that we did not want to pen children up in detention centers. No. We rallied faith leaders and accommodated them in individual foster homes. And we took more of those Central American refugee kids in Maryland per capita than any other state in the United States. Well, as you might imagine, the amount of xenophobes and sort of racist comments that were hurled at our actions were many, and they were loud. But the truth was stronger. One of my advisors at the time said to me, the son of immigrants himself, "I love what you did, but I'm not sure how it's going to turn out." He meant politically. I told him, "I don't care. We're going to do what's right for the kids. And the people, when we speak to the goodness in their hearts, will rise." And that's what happened in our state. 5,000 people stepped forward, became foster parents for these kids, people of all different faiths. That's the goodness that's in the heart of Americans. At the Christmas holiday open house, as my wife and I stood in front of the Christmas tree at Government House, there was a long line of people coming by. You know, you do the handshake, you do the picture in front of the tree, move on. And a gentleman came up to me, and he said, "I want you to meet this little boy here. His name is Emmanuel." It was Christmas time. He said, "His name is Emmanuel, and he's one of the Central American refugee kids who was able to come here because of you." And then in Spanish, he told the little boy that I was the governor. And the little boy shook my hand just for a second. And then, breaking that handshake, he wrapped me around the waist in a hug that I will never, ever forget. You want to talk to people who believe very deeply in the American dream, who love this country and will do anything to make her stronger? Talk to new American immigrants. Talk to those who have had to flee death gangs and oppression. Talk to those who yearn to be free. Talk to those who have risked it all in order to make it here to the United States. At this Christmas time, I remember that story. And I remembered very distinctly then that Emmanuel means God is with us. God is with us today as well. God is with us this year and in this Christmas season. And we intern him and his parents behind barbed wire fence and detention camps in our name. We are a better people than this. We are a good people. We are a compassionate people. We are a generous people. This election is not just about filling the important office of President of the United States. It is a battle for the soul of America. It is a battle that says that we are all in this together, that we are one, our cause is one, and we must help each other if we are to succeed. God bless you all. Thank you for being here. I need your help. Keep up your good work. Thanks.
Thank you, Governor O'Malley. ¿Se puede? ¿Se puede? Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Governor O'Malley. Thank you. We want to continue with the program, so just want to let you know about the next steps. We are going to have the afternoon sessions as was planned. The plenary is between 1:45 to 3 p.m. about economic integrity, and then we are going to have Senator Sanders at 3 p.m. via video. So thank you all of you for being here. Thanks a lot.